The alarm blared across the UES Defiant, its sound cutting through the normal hum of the ship's systems. Red lights flashed, bathing the polished metal walls in an eerie glow. The crew members rushed to their posts, their faces tight with worry, but their movements sure and trained. Admiral Franklin Pierce walked onto the bridge with steady steps. His gray eyes surveyed the room as the doors closed behind him. At 62, his hair had turned silver, but his back remained straight and his mind sharp. 27 years in space had taught him that panic never helped anyone. "Status report," he ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. Lieutenant George Winters looked up from his screen. "Sir, we've detected multiple ships entering the solar system. They crossed Jupiter's orbit 10 minutes ago." "How many?" Pierce asked as he settled into his command chair. Winters swallowed hard. 300 vessels, sir. Maybe more." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. Earth's defense fleet had only 27 ships. Commander Olivia Sanchez stepped forward, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Admiral, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. They want to talk." Pierce nodded. "Put them on screen." The UR main view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that made several crew members gasp. The alien had gray-green skin with scales that shimmered under the lights of its ship. Its eyes were large, yellow, and had vertical pupils like a cat's. 4 arms crossed over a broad chest covered in what looked like ceremonial armor. "I am Supreme Overlord Zixtar of the Krathax Dominion," the alien announced. Its voice came, through the translator with a metallic edge. "Your solar system now belongs to us. Surrender your planets and resources immediately." Admiral Pierce stood up, straightening his blue uniform. "This is Admiral Franklin Pierce of the United Earth Defense Force. We do not recognize your claim to our system or your authority. We suggest you turn your fleet around and leave peacefully." The alien's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your bravery is noted, human, but misplaced." The view on the screen pulled back, showing the massive bridge of the alien flagship. At least 24 Krathax officers worked at various stations, all bigger and more imposing than any human. "Our intelligence informed us that humans had reached the stars," Zixtar continued, "but we expected more." His eyes narrowed as he studied something off-screen. "Is this truly your defense force? These tiny vessels are what stand between us and your world?" The mockery in his voice needed no translation. On the Defiance bridge, communications officer Lisa Bell whispered to Winters, "They always fall for it. Every single time." Admiral Pierce's face remained blank. "We prefer quality over quantity, Overlord." Zixtar made a sound like stones grinding together, apparently a laugh. "Your species has a sense of humor. That is rare." He leaned forward. "But this conversation is merely a courtesy. Your surrender will save many lives. Your tiny fleet cannot hope to stand against the might of the Dominion." Around the bridge, the human officers exchanged quick glances. Some even smiled. "We respectfully decline your offer," Admiral Pierce replied. His voice was firm without a hint of fear. "Humanity does not surrender." Zixtar's yellow eyes widened slightly, perhaps surprised by the human's confidence. "Then you choose destruction, so be it." The screen went black. Commander Sanchez moved to stand beside the Admiral. "They've cut communication, sir." Pierce nodded, his eyes still on the blank screen. "As expected. What's their fleet doing?" "Forming attack positions," Winters reported. "They're spreading out to surround our ships." Chief Engineer Paul Grant's voice came through the comm system. "Engineering to bridge. Quantum displacement drives are charged and ready, Admiral. All ships reporting green status." "Thank you, Chief," Pierce replied. He turned to look at his bridge crew. They all wore the same expression, not fear of the overwhelming alien force but determination. They knew what was coming. "Send the coded signal to all ships," Pierce ordered. "Operation Thunderclap begins in 5 minutes." Commander Sanchez nodded and relayed the order. "Message sent and confirmed, sir." Admiral Pierce walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars through the reinforced viewport. In the distance, he could see tiny points of light, moving, The Krathax Armada positioning for attack. 300 warships against 27 human vessels. The numbers seemed impossible. They think they know what they're facing, Pierce said quietly. Just like the Arcturians did. Just like the Ming Collective did. And they all made the same mistake, Commander Sanchez added, coming to stand beside him. Pierce nodded. They see our small numbers and think we're weak. They don't understand that for humans, size has never determined the outcome of battle. Across the fleet, human captains received the coded signal and prepared their ships. Engineers made final adjustments to systems that no other species in the galaxy had developed. Tactical officers checked weapons that defied conventional understanding. On the Defiant, Dr. Kelly Martinez, the ship's science officer, entered the bridge. The quantum field calculations are complete, Admiral. All ships have received the coordinates. Thank you, Doctor, Pierce said. He returned to his command chair and pressed a button on the armrest. This is Admiral Pierce to all ships. The enemy has made their position clear. They see our fleet and think they know what they're facing. He paused. Let's show them how wrong they are. Around him, his crew took their positions with calm efficiency. They had trained for this. They had prepared for the day when humanity would face a superior force and have to prove once again that appearances could be deceiving. Lieutenant Winters looked up from his station. Enemy ships are powering up weapons, sir. Pierce nodded. Right on schedule. He glanced at the chronometer on the main screen. 4 minutes had passed since he gave the order. All ships in position, Admiral, Commander Sanchez reported. Pierce took a deep breath. The next few moments would determine the fate of Earth and all its colonies. But he felt no doubt. The history of humanity was filled with examples of the smaller force defeating the larger one through innovation and strategy. Initiate Operation Thunderclap, he ordered. And with that command, the battle that would become legend throughout the galaxy began. The space between Earth and Mars lit up like a lightning storm as Operation Thunderclap began. On the main bridge of the Krathax flagship, Supreme Overlord Zix-Tar leaned forward in his command throne, yellow eyes fixed on the tactical display. Target, the largest human vessel first, he ordered, pointing a clawed finger at the image of the UES Defiant. Show them the price of defiance. Military strategist Vral Khan, a veteran of 12 conquest campaigns, studied the movements of the human ships with growing confusion. Overlord, their formation makes no strategic sense. They appear to be creating a geometric pattern rather than a defensive screen. The 27 human vessels had arranged themselves in what looked like a three-dimensional star pattern, with the Defiant at the center. It left them completely exposed to attack from multiple angles. Zix-Tar flicked his tail dismissively. They clearly know nothing of space combat. It matters not. Commence the attack. Yes, Overlord, Vral Khan replied, though doubt crept into his voice. In all his years of battle, he had never seen a species arrange their ships in such a vulnerable way when facing overwhelming odds. Either the humans were fools, or they knew something the Krathax did not. The first wave of Krathax battleships opened fire, sending bright blue energy beams slicing through space toward the human fleet. Aboard, the UES Defiant, deep in the engineering section, Dr. Ellen Wright worked with intense focus. The quantum displacement drive hummed beneath her hands, its complex systems pulsing with energy that seemed to bend the light around it. At 45, Wright had spent her entire adult life developing this technology, first as a theoretical concept, then as a prototype, and now as humanity's greatest defense. Quantum displacement drive at full power, she reported through her comlink. Ready on your command, Admiral. On the bridge, Admiral Pierce nodded. All ships report ready. Doctor, initiate displacement field. Now. Dr. Wright pressed her palm against the activation panel. The drive's hum rose to a high-pitched whine, and the deck plating beneath her feet vibrated. Quantum field forming. Displacement in 3, 2, 1. Around her, reality seemed to waver as the quantum field took effect. At that exact moment, the Krathax weapons fire reached the position of the human fleet and passed through empty space. The energy beams continued their journey uninterrupted, several of them striking other Krathax ships on the far side of the formation. What? Zixtar stood up, his massive frame towering over the bridge officers. Where did they go? Vralkhan frantically worked his control panel. Sensors are detecting, this can't be right. He looked up, his face showing shock. They're showing up in multiple locations simultaneously. The main view screen updated to show the battlefield, where there had been 27 human ships. Moments ago now there appeared to be hundreds, then thousands, all identical to the original fleet. What trickery is this? Demanded Zixtar as more and more ship signatures filled the screen. What the Krathax didn't understand, what no other species in the galaxy had yet grasped, was that humanity's tiny fleet represented the culmination of generations of technological innovation born from centuries of warfare and survival on Earth. Human history was filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through superior strategy and technology. From ancient naval battles where nimble ships outmaneuvered larger galleons, to guerrilla fighters defeating conventional armies, to digital viruses bringing down massive computer networks, humans had always found ways to use their opponents' size against them. The quantum displacement drive was the latest evolution of this philosophy. Rather than trying to match the Krathax ship for ship, humanity had developed technology that made numbers irrelevant. On the Defiance bridge, Commander Sanchez monitored the tactical display with satisfaction. Quantum field stable across all ships, Admiral. Phase shifting complete. Perfect, Pierce replied. And the Krathax reaction? Complete confusion, sir, Lieutenant Winters reported with a small smile. Their formation is breaking up as ships try to target our phantom signals. The quantum displacement drive didn't actually create copies of the human ships. Instead, it shifted each vessel partially out of normal space-time, allowing it to exist in multiple probability states simultaneously. To enemy sensors, it appeared as if each ship was in thousands of places at once, making targeting impossible. On the Krathax flagship, chaos had broken out. Target that cluster, Zixtar shouted, pointing at a group of human ship signatures. Weapons fired. No impact, reported a weapons officer. They're not there, Overlord. Then target that group, he roared, pointing at another cluster. Also no impact, came the frustrated reply. Vralkhan's eyes widened as he studied the readings more carefully. Overlord, I don't think those are actual ships. They appear to be some kind of energy signatures. Zixtar slammed his fist on the arm of his command throne. Impossible. No species has mastered such technology. Meanwhile, on the Defiant, Admiral Pierce gave the next order. Deploy microdrones. In the specialized launch bay, Chief Engineer Paul Grant verified the final preparations. Thousands of tiny compartments lined the walls, each containing a drone, smaller than a human fingernail. Micro-drones armed and ready, Admiral, he reported. Launch, ordered Pierce. With a soft hiss, rather than the roar of conventional weapons, the launch ports opened. From each of the 27 human vessels, thousands of microscopic drones shot into space propelled by miniature ion engines. Their metal casings reflected no light, and their size made them virtually invisible to standard sensors. These micro-drones were the second part of humanity's defense strategy. While the quantum displacement drive confused and distracted the Yoshi enemy, the drones would infiltrate their ships and do the real damage. Lieutenant Winters watched the deployment on a specialized screen that tracked the drones' movements. Micro-drone swarms deployed and moving toward targets. First wave will reach enemy vessels in approximately 3 minutes. Lisa Bell, who had been listening to the Krathax communications, smiled at her console. They're completely focused on trying to target our phantom ships. They haven't detected the drones at all. Admiral Pierce nodded with grim satisfaction. They thought our fleet was tiny. They never considered that each of our ships contains an entire fleet of its own. The battle had only just begun, but already the tide was turning in humanity's favor. The first micro-drone reached a Krathax destroyer 3 minutes and 27 seconds after deployment. It slipped through a microscopic crack in the hull near an external sensor array, a flaw too small for any regular maintenance check to detect. Once inside, it navigated through the narrow spaces between wall panels, following its programmed path toward the ship's main computer core. Across the Krathax fleet, thousands of similar infiltrations were happening simultaneously. The microdrones moved undetected, their tiny forms invisible to the alien crews who were still trying to target the phantom human fleet. On the bridge of the Krathax flagship, Supreme Overlord Zix Tar paced back and forth, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. His tail lashed from side to side in anger. "How can we not hit a single one of their ships?" he demanded. "There are thousands of them." Military strategist Vral Khan had abandoned his usual calm. "We've fired over 200 energy torpedoes and not one has found a target. It's as if they're not really there." "Impossible." Zixtar slammed his fist into a nearby console, cracking its surface. "No species can create that many ships out of nothing." "Sir," a junior officer called out, his voice nervous. "We're receiving strange reports from several ships. They're experiencing system failures and power fluctuations." Vral Khan turned to face the officer. "Which ships? What systems?" "It started with the outer perimeter vessels," the officer reported. "Communication systems first, then weapons targeting. Now some are reporting life support instabilities." Before Vral Khan could respond, the lights on the bridge flickered. The main view screen showing the battlefield blinked out for a second, then returned, but now displayed strange symbols instead of the tactical view. "What is happening to our systems?" Zix Tar roared. What was happening was precisely what humanity had planned. Inside the Krathax flagship, 12 microdrones had reached the main computer core. Each one was smaller than a grain of rice, but contained advanced hacking tools specifically designed to target alien computer systems. Throughout the Krathax fleet, similar scenarios were unfolding. The microdrones had infiltrated 83% of the alien vessels and begun their sabotage. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, the atmosphere was tense but confident. Admiral Pierce watched the tactical display as red indicators representing Krathax vessels began to flicker and change status. "How many ships have been compromised?" he asked. Commander Sanchez studied her screen. 247 confirmed infiltrations, sir. That's about 82% of their fleet. Drone teams are reporting successful system access on most targets." "Lieutenant." Winters nodded in approval. "Stage 1 complete. Their sensors still can't distinguish our actual ships from the quantum echoes." "And Stage 2 is well underway," Pierce added, watching more indicators change from solid red to flashing yellow on the display. "Dr. Wright, how's our quantum field? Holding up?" Dr. Wright's voice came through the comm. "Field integrity at 94%, Admiral. We can maintain this state for another 3 hours if needed, but I don't think it will take that long." Pierce allowed himself a small smile. "I agree, Doctor. At this rate, they'll either surrender or be completely disabled within the hour." Across space, the mighty Krathax armada was falling into disarray. Ship after ship reported critical systems shutdowns, weapons malfunctions, and life support failures. With no way to accurately target the human vessels and no understanding of what was causing their system failures, panic began to spread among the alien crews. On one Krathax battlecruiser, Captain Drexenar watched in horror as his ship's life support readings dropped into critical levels. "Seal all compartments," he ordered. "Emergency breathing apparatus for all crew." His second-in-command worked frantically at a control panel that kept flickering on and off. "Systems aren't responding. Captain, something's blocking our commands." In the engine room of the same vessel, Chief Engineer Takvar discovered something alarming. "Captain, our reactor containment field is fluctuating. I can't stabilize it from here." Similar scenes played out across dozens of Krathax ships. Some lost power completely and drifted helplessly in space. Others found their weapon systems firing randomly, sometimes hitting their own fleet members. Navigation systems sent ships veering off course, nearly causing collisions. Through it all, the human fleet remained in their star formation, protected by their quantum displacement field, directing the micro-drone attack with precision. Captain Ryan Miller of the UES Resolute contacted the flagship. "Admiral Pierce, we're detecting massive energy buildups in several enemy vessels. Looks like they're losing control of their reactor containment." Admiral Pierce nodded grimly. Notify all ships to prepare for possible shock waves if those reactors blow, and open a channel to the Krathax flagship. Communications Officer Lisa Bell worked quickly. Channel open, sir. Pierce stood tall, his voice firm as he addressed the alien commander. This is Admiral Franklin Pierce of the United Earth Defense Force. Your fleet is compromised. Your tactical advantage is lost. Several of your ships are on the verge of catastrophic reactor failure. Surrender now, and we will help stabilize your vessels. On the Krathax flagship, the message played through static-filled speakers. The bridge was in chaos, with emergency lights flashing and crew members running between stations trying to regain control of their systems. Supreme Overlord Zixtar stared at the message displayed on the partially functioning view screen. His proud posture was gone, replaced by confusion and growing fear. How? He whispered. How could 27 tiny ships do this to us? Vralcon approached his commander, his voice low so only Zixtar could hear. Overlord, we have no choice. If those reactors detonate, we'll lose a third of our fleet instantly. Zixtar's yellow eyes narrowed. You suggest surrender to these humans? I suggest survival, Vralcon replied. And learning more about this technology they possess. No species we've encountered has anything like this. We were wrong about them. The Supreme Overlord looked around his failing bridge. The mighty flagship that had led conquests of 12 systems was now barely functioning. His crew looked to him with desperate eyes. Finally, he nodded. Send the surrender signal. Back on the Defiant, Bell reported excitedly. Admiral, we're receiving a signal from the Krathax flagship. They're surrendering, sir. A cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly silenced by Pierce's raised hand. Confirm that signal and transmit instructions for their complete stand-down. Tell Dr. Wright to begin reducing the quantum field gradually. We don't want to spook them by suddenly dropping to 27 ships. Commander Sanchez stepped closer to the Admiral. Sir, should we recall the micro-drones? Pierce shook his head. Not yet. Keep them in place until we've secured the surrender of every ship in their fleet, and have our techs use the drones to stabilize any critical reactors. We didn't come here to slaughter them. As the human fleet began the careful process of accepting the Krathax surrender, Admiral Pierce looked out at the stars again. The mighty alien armada that had threatened Earth was now at humanity's mercy, defeated not by matching their numbers or firepower, but by the innovative thinking that had defined human warfare throughout history. Size isn't everything, Pierce said quietly to himself. Sometimes the smallest fleet carries the biggest punch. 1 week after the battle in Earth's solar system, the Grand Hall of the United Earth Council in Geneva buzzed with tense energy. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long rectangles of light across the polished marble floor. Representatives from all Earth nations and colonies filled the curved rows of seats that faced the central podium. At exactly 10 a.m. Earth Standard Time, the main doors swung open. A group of humans in formal blue military uniforms entered, led by Admiral Franklin Pierce. Behind them walked 6 Krathax, their massive frames making the human honor guard look small in comparison. Despite their size, the aliens moved cautiously, their once proud postures now hesitant. Supreme Overlord Zixtar, now referred to simply as Representative Zixtar, walked at the front of the alien delegation. His ceremonial armor had been replaced with a simple gray diplomatic robe. The change in his demeanor was striking. The arrogance had vanished from his yellow eyes, replaced with a wary respect. Council Chairwoman Sofia Martinez stood as the procession reached the center of the room. At 68, her face showed the lines of experience, but her voice remained strong and clear. This special session of the United Earth Council is now in session, she announced. Today we formalize the peace agreement between Earth and the Krathax Dominion. She turned to Commander Olivia Sanchez, who was serving as diplomatic liaison. Commander, please present the terms for the record. Sanchez stepped forward, a data tablet in her hands. For the record, let it be known that the Krathax Dominion has signed an unconditional surrender and non-aggression pact with Earth and all its colonies. The terms include immediate withdrawal from Earth's solar system, return of all conquered territories to their native species, and sharing of key technologies as reparations. A murmur ran through the crowd. Many had expected harsher terms given the Krathak's history of conquest. Chairwoman Martinez addressed this directly. Some may wonder why we have chosen this path. Earth has always believed in firm but fair justice. Our goal is peace, not revenge. Admiral Pierce nodded his agreement. Throughout human history, the harshest peace terms had often led to future conflicts. He had argued strongly for a balanced approach that would prevent the Krathaks from threatening Earth again, while avoiding creating a bitter enemy. Representative Zix Tar stepped forward, towering over the humans around him. The room fell silent. "We gravely misjudged humanity," he began, his translator conveying his deep voice clearly. "Our intelligence suggested your species had only recently achieved interstellar travel, that your technology was primitive compared to ours." He paused, his 4 hands clasped before him in what the humans had learned was a gesture of humility among his people. "In 12 prior conquests, we encountered species who built massive fleets to defend their worlds. We believed this was the only approach to space warfare. We saw your small number of ships and thought victory would be easy." His eyes scanned the room. "We were wrong." Dr. Ellen Wright sat in the front row watching the Krathak's leader with interest. Her quantum displacement drive had changed the course of history, yet few in the room would recognize her face. She preferred working in her lab to public recognition. "Chairwoman." Martinez gestured to her. "Dr. Wright, perhaps you could explain to our guests how humanity approached this challenge differently?" Surprised, Wright rose and walked to the podium. She wasn't comfortable with public speaking, but she understood the importance of this moment. "Throughout human history," she began, her voice growing stronger as she spoke, "we've learned that bigger doesn't always mean better. While other species developed along paths of increasing size and energy output, humans took a different approach." She tapped a control on the podium, and a holographic display appeared, showing the quantum displacement. "Drive schematics. Instead of building thousands of ships to match your numbers, we developed technology that made numbers irrelevant. Our quantum displacement drive allowed each ship to exist in multiple probability states simultaneously, making them impossible to target effectively." The Krathak's delegation studied the display with obvious fascination. One of them, a science officer named Texalorn, leaned forward with particular interest. Wright continued, "And instead of making our weapons bigger, we made them smaller. Our micro-drones, each no larger than a grain of sand, could infiltrate your ships through microscopic openings and disable your systems from within." Lieutenant George Winters, seated near the back of the hall, whispered to Lisa Bell beside him, "Look at their faces. They still can't believe they were defeated by invisible drones and ghost ships." Bell nodded. "Size isn't everything. That's a lesson they won't forget." At the podium, Dr. Wright was concluding her explanation. "In essence, we used your greatest strength, your size, against you. Your massive ships had more entry points for our drones. Your complex systems gave us more targets. Your strict military hierarchy meant once we disabled your command ships, the others didn't know how to adapt." Representative Zix Tar nodded slowly. "A humbling lesson. One that will change how the Dominion approaches warfare and diplomacy forever." Admiral Pierce stepped forward. "Throughout human history, smaller, more agile forces have defeated larger ones through superior tactics and technology. From ancient naval battles to modern warfare, we learned that overwhelming force isn't always the answer." Chairwoman Martinez raised her hand. "And now we hope to share that lesson peacefully. This agreement marks not the subjugation of the Krathaks, but the beginning of a new relationship." The signing ceremony proceeded with solemn dignity. When it was complete, the Krathak's delegation was escorted to a reception in the adjoining hall, where they would meet with Earth scientists and leaders in a less formal setting. As the crowd dispersed, Admiral Pierce found Dr. Wright standing alone by a window looking out at Lake Geneva. "You should be proud," he said, joining her. "Your work saved Earth from conquest." She smiled slightly. "I'm a scientist, not a warrior. I hope the Krathaks meant what they said about changing their ways." "I believe they did," Pierce replied. "Nothing convinces like a demonstration. They came expecting an easy victory and instead received the shock of their lives. He chuckled. Did you see Texelorn's face when you explained the quantum drive? I think he's going to request an exchange program so he can study with our scientists. 3 months later, news of humanity's victory had spread throughout the galaxy. The Krathak's withdrawal from their conquered territories created a power shift that rippled across dozens of star systems. Species that had lived under Dominion rule for generations suddenly found themselves free. On the newly established diplomatic station orbiting Jupiter, Lieutenant Winters and Lisa Bell stood at a viewport, watching vessels from a dozen different alien civilizations arrive for a galactic conference. Earth, once considered a minor power with limited military capability, had been chosen to host the first Galaxy Cooperation Summit. They're not mocking our tiny fleet anymore, Lisa observed, nodding toward a massive ship bearing the markings of the Arcturian Confederation, another powerful species that had previously dismissed humans as insignificant. George grinned. Size isn't everything. Sometimes it's what you do with it that counts. As humanity stepped onto the galactic stage, they carried with them a reputation that would endure for generations. Never underestimate the species that turned smallness into an advantage, because what appears to be a limitation might actually be the harbinger of your doom. The mighty Krathaks had learned this lesson the hard way. Other species took note. It was better to have humans as friends than enemies. The tiny fleet that had seemed so laughable had revealed a profound truth about humanity. Their greatest strength wasn't in their numbers, but in their ability to think differently than anyone else in the galaxy. The end.